So I've been a little bit on a Waldorf kick lately, if you haven't been able to tell, and I hate that all the videos have been negative. Synths That Time Forgot, failed Holy Grail, but I'm going to go 3 for 3 and talk about the Waldorf Kyra and how I'm surprised that Florian hasn't already covered it in an episode of Bad Gear. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Zach Marr from Alamo Music here in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications. This is our Alamo Sound Lab channel where we talk about all things music tech related, and today we're talking about the Waldorf Kyra. And it's kind of belongs in the category of Synths That Time Forgot. Somebody commented on the Quantum video that we did then said, you really should cover this one before you cover the Quantum as a synth that time forgot. And I actually agree, because this is really perplexing. It's beautiful. When I saw pictures of it, I was really excited to play it. And I was reading reviews online before we got it in. And again, pretty high praise in a lot of the reviews that people have written online that have bought it. But there's an equal amount of really negative feedback on this synth, and it's really kind of controversial. And I'm surprised that that's like perfect material for a Bad Gear episode, so I think Florian should cover this in my opinion. But I wanted to give my take on it and also kind of speak to why I think it's had this mixed reaction and not been super successful. So first, this is really exploring kind of an obscure trend in synthesis, I think, and a not very popular one, but it's the use of FPGA chips. So I think they're like field gate something array. It's some type of technology that basically is supposed to be better for producing higher resolution sound with taking less bandwidth from a computer. And it's not super common. You only find it, I think, in the Novation Summit. In terms of synths that are being produced, the Peak and the Summit use the FPGA technology. So it's kind of a rare thing. It's like the ARM chips that are being used in some other synthesizers as well. It is kind of a trend to increase the resolution of sound that synths are able to produce and give you even higher fidelity kind of output that a lot of times you need a really expensive computer to and fans and whatnot to produce that level of kind of soft synth sound in a computer. So these are all digital, and the kind of idea in them is that it's this new technology that allows you to have higher fidelity, higher resolution sound. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think theoretically, I think my experience with both the Peak and the Summit and the Kyra at this point is that it's a very particular sound, and higher resolution and higher fidelity sound doesn't necessarily correlate, I think, to everybody to necessarily being better. It's just a different palette, and not everybody's tastes are going to jive with it. So I think that people have been really excited about this. There's also, it's been kind of talked about as an heir to the Virus kind of lineage, the Virus series of synths that also kind of played with some of these ideas. And the layout is very similar to a Virus synth, Virus TI in particular, as it's been pointed out in different reviews and what people have said. But you know, it's also interesting in that it's really not a very good UI. It's not intuitive. There's a lot of menu diving. It's surprisingly not fun to tweak when you're playing sounds. It's way over-spec'd, or it's super over. It has a ton of amazing specs on paper, but from a practical standpoint, getting and utilizing all the things that are inside of it is not particularly pleasant with the interface. And I think what's also interesting is that Waldorf didn't design the synth entirely. There's a story about some other guy that was designing the synth, and Waldorf basically bought the technology and finished it and put it into a beautiful package. But the kind of rumor is they bought the technology for the technology and not for this synth design, and they went ahead and released this synth. And so there's a lot of unintuitive things about it. There's no rotary encoder to change things on here. You power it on and off by holding these buttons. A lot of like weird things that wouldn't necessarily, what I wouldn't associate with good synth design, and like the Quantum and the Iridium really are well designed and intuitive. This is not. And so it's kind of funny that it's branded Waldorf, even though they didn't do the whole thing. And as you play with it, you can kind of really feel that. It's also, people are not super happy that it's kind of billed as a wavetable synth, but there's not wavetable scanning, so it's not so much like that. It's got something like 4,000 wavetables in it, but you have to scroll through them in this really bizarre way it's not even scrolling. You literally have to use the buttons to scroll through it. So it's a true pain in the ass to program and to mess with. But let's talk about the sound. Again, it's a very, very modern sound. I would say it's hyper modern almost. It's almost clinical, and it's almost has to be a background. To me, it sounds like almost it's something that you add on to other instrumentation, because it doesn't have a lot of body. I think maybe I haven't played around with it enough. It does occasionally, but it's just got this super, I think personally, my taste is not for super high resolution digital synth sound. I think it might be really great in production environments and kind of arranging pieces of music, but personally, it's not my taste. And I know some people love the way this sounds. So I'm going to qualify that as that's a totally personal thing for me. But it's a really interesting little piece that I think is misunderstood. It's not really marketed. Apparently, Waldorf isn't really updating or fixing the issues that people have with it. And it's kind of been left behind. You can find them pretty cheap, but what's confusing is the reviews are all pretty good, except when you read it on the forum. So let's take a listen. I'll conclude with some final thoughts. So there you have it, the Kyra. I found that it does have some kind of like sweet spots and kind of juicy moments, and so I'd like to spend more time with it. And really, I've heard that the more time you spend with it, the more rewarding it gets, and the kind of interest and some of the interesting things that it does are come out as you play with it. The filters really are super nice for a digital synth. I think that's part of that FPGA technology. It's just there's not a lot of artifacts in any of it, which are sometimes musical in themselves, artifacts, but there's also a musicalness to not having artifacts. So it's just, to me, a different paintbrush. It's not really super well defined because there's not a lot of FPGA synths. The Summit, the Peak, and the Kyra, as far as I know. I think others are moving that direction, but it'll be interesting to see what that does in terms of exploring that palette and exploring what that technology does for sound design. So again, that's my take on it. Would love to hear your take. Oh, last thing, I forgot. The stereo implementation of the outputs is really nice. I think that's something that Waldorf always does well. They really understand the musicality of stereo. And in all their synths, I've noticed there's really appreciation and ability to really take advantage of that. And I think that is present here. And I have to shout them out for that. But that's my take on the Kyra. What's yours? Do you have one? Have you thought about it? What do you think about this kind of branch of synthesis that's like hot, new processor technology? Is it something that's interesting to you? Please leave a comment below. Would love to continue the conversation, and thanks for watching today.